Luca, really happy to have you on the show today. I've been meaning to talk to you. We have so much to dive into, and obviously, today's interview, we're March 29th, coming off the heels of your big fundraise. So you guys were like kind of the talk of the town, for the past few weeks. Since it's so, I want to say fresh, at least in my mind. What was the thing that surprised you the most of the fundraise, like particularly around the news of the announcement?
I think to the reach actually of the announcement. Like I think the fact that we've been working pretty much globally since day one. The kind of press we had all around the world, but pretty much by being pretty much unknown, even in Montreal, that was really exciting. We didn't expect this at all when we saw the news come out, and so like obviously we took it like with a smile on our face because at the end of the day it's PR, and that's not gonna that puts bread on the table, but it was definitely surprising.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's because you guys were kind of like the best kept secret in town. I find for like a long time, and I found like this was like your big coming out party, right? Like massive round, huge metrics. So it was like one of these like, well, it's for you, I'm sure it was like kind of like a crowning achievement, but it's also like 10 years to make an overnight success. In terms of the fundraise itself, I want to dive into a little bit. But before we get to the fundraise, I want to talk obviously talent, right? Like what you guys have built, right? And like we said, a crowning achievement, at least one big milestone. Um, I want to dive into that 10-year part, right? Because you guys worked for it for so long with your two other co-founders. Now with this milestone achieved, did you take time to reflect on it, like have a little bit of like a celebratory party, say, hey, we did achieve something, even though it's not the end of the road, but it is a big gate. So curious about any like introspections that you may have had.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely, we did celebrate for sure, and I always say that as far as I'm concerned, like I don't celebrate enough. Like it's a bit like the sports mentality. Like when you win a competition and you straight away thinking about the next one, right? And so I think that's how I always seen it. Always thinking of what's happening next. But I think that right now, in terms of introspection, no, I mean we are extremely excited with what's going on. It was a tough round. It was a tough round. It took a while. Like we took like the preparation. Because historically we were a bit more like we're not as professionalized as you type of Series A company or B company, because we were like founder owned for, and we still are, but like for a long time, and we didn't let like private investors or like institutional investors coming in until the year pretty much eight. And so there's a lot of things that needed to change. And so we had the first round with the CAS. And so after the round with the CAS, they helped us professionalize our finance department and some of our operations. And so the arrival of our CFO, Philippe Bonin, changed everything. And the level of professionalization and the level of work that had to be put, into the raise was something that we hadn't seen before. But it really helped. And so it was a very interesting round. We've been we were not expecting so much traction, but it was here, and yeah, so like overall a very very exciting prospect, and happy to move forward.
Yeah, we'll talk about, I guess, your bold vision and where you guys want to go, like kind of next step in the evolution. Maybe any advice for any founders or entrepreneurs listening, because just because you went through this, this is like your second round, obviously huge round, like that I think is very public, and I'll obviously link the big updates in the show notes. But curious if you have any like takeaways or lessons, that you can maybe impart on others.
Yeah, I think one thing we did well this time and that we didn't do well the previous time is that we really surrounded ourselves with experts, and having the CFO, Philippe, in this case, really allowed us to he arrived and he said, okay, Lucas is this way, Ben is this way, Max is this way. They all have a special power, and I'm great with finance, and so there are other things that we need to get better. And I think that this like our weaknesses have been massively shown in our previous round, And so when we started working with Philippe, when he joined, he started working with experts. We didn't have like we didn't have a CMO or like a 10-year experience as CTO or CPO or these kind of things that we haven't done in the past. And so I think that working with external experts, letting us know what our weaknesses were, allowed us to better frame our story and our vision for this round, and that really helped.
Yeah, it's yeah. So what I say, it's like one of these like proud moments I find for the Quebec ecosystem. So obviously, you guys raised this big $150 million round. What was the vision that you depicted, right? So I'm thinking of that slide, right, where it's like, hey, where we want to go. We're going to talk about the past, but let's talk maybe a little about the future first.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the industry is changing a lot right now. And so the future is, it, you have the job board industry and you have the recruitment industry that are merging into one. And so this unlocks a lot of opportunities for companies like us that own the raw material, meaning the candidate that comes on our site and that is looking for placement. So right now we basically connect, people to work. But the way we do this is mostly through showing them relevant jobs, but we don't control the application process. And so the future for us right now, the vision is to be able to control the application process, control the hiring process, and in the future, in a distant future, will be to control the again, not only the hiring process but the payroll process as well.
Yeah, almost like full stack, right? So you want to like start at the higher end, upper funnel, and then own it all the way through. Maybe it's a good time to ask you, like, for people that don't know Talent.com, like, explain the business model, like, in layman's terms.
Yeah, so the way Talentcom works is that we are a job aggregator, and so we created basically spiders. So a bit like Google, we index content, job content from different sites. So we go in every single career site around the planet. So think about Southwest Airlines, RBC, Desjardins, Quebec, like all those sites in 79 countries. Bring all of our jobs in one platform, and we basically package 30 million jobs in one single place in 79 countries. And then our goal is to, whenever users or candidates come on our platform, when they search for jobs, we show the most relevant jobs on top. And so the way we monetize, because traditionally you need to pay to post, and traditional job boards in the past, well, now you don't pay to post, right? So here the way we monetize is we give the opportunity to companies to actually advertise their jobs and appear on top of job search results. And the way we monetize on a pay-per-click base, it's on a pay-per-performance base. They have the ability to appear on top of the searches, and every time there is a click to their job, they pay a price. And that price depends on the demand. If there is a lot of demand for a given location, well, the price will be high. If there is low demand, obviously the price will be low. So a very good example of a very high price today would be a truck driver in North Dakota. Like everyone knows we're looking for a lot of truck drivers, right? Or nurses, And so those kind of jobs, typically you could yield like $1.50 to $2 even sometimes per click, right? And so this is how we make money.
Yeah, and you mentioned at the beginning, you kind of went over quickly, but it's like the scale of what you guys are doing, right? Like in terms of like just traffic, tens of millions of jobs. So unpacking maybe that user centric model, right, that you've spoken about, right? So owning that application piece. What's your vision behind this? Like, obviously, I think it unlocks like tremendous revenue opportunities, right, in terms of your business model. But I'd like to hear a little bit, like, if you double click on it.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, the job board industry is had a very interesting path. And so historically, you needed to post, right? You post to see, to post jobs, and candidates will only see the jobs that would be posted from companies. But the application funnel, the way you would apply would be kind of user friendly, because you would just create one user, and then you would apply to every single job available, on every single site, like Workopolis, Monster, Career Builder, and so on. And then you had job aggregators that arrived, right? And so what happened is that what we traded pretty much user friendliness in terms of application process with more content. So instead of having, like 10,000 jobs, we started having like millions of jobs, because every single jobs were in one place. And candidates like that because they like the choice. And so that's why they flooded job aggregators. But the problem that we created, on the other hand, was the user experience, because then you end up going, every time you click on a job, you end up ending on every single ATS or career site from every single employer. And the application process there takes longer. It's different from every single company. And obviously, it's a bit more cumbersome. And so the idea for us here and for the industry now is to recreate a better user experience for every single user. So for us, the vision right now is obviously to have all those integrations with every single ATS, like application tracking systems from large employers, for candidates to be able to see all the content, but not only to see all the content, but also to be able to apply directly on the jobs. On our platform, and then through an API, we would be able to redirect, the application directly on the back end of all those ATSs. And so this is what we'll actually be working on, and this will, it will be the best of both worlds. Not only that, but it will force us also to, once we see who is applying to jobs, we will be able to actually better serve our employers, serve them better quality of candidates, as well as better serve our candidates better jobs, basically, as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So you can think of building APIs to tie into things like a Workday or other systems, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, that's fascinating, right? So yeah, it's much more. I'm thinking of the word in French, tentaculaire, like putting your hooks into much different systems. So making it much harder, almost like a CRM or ERP, to unplug for an employer, right? Versus today, where you're just really like more pay per click in terms of your model.
Yeah, but this is very, it's very labor intensive. Like you need to. There's nothing scalable about. Once you have that integration, it's extremely scalable, because then you can work with, for example, you mentioned Workday. Once you have that Workday integration, you can start working with every single Workday client. But you need those connections, right? These are partnerships. So you need to be able to talk to all those ATSs first, and you need your client to also talk to their ATS, say, hey, we want to do it, and sometimes you have to pay for it as well. So this is it's a complex adventure and endeavor, but like the reality is that it's where we believe the industry is going, and we're massively investing into it to make that application process more user friendly for candidates.
Yeah, I'm guessing, like a question that you got a lot during the fundraise was like, how big is this, right? Like, what's the TAM, and like how big, so like, what is your ambition? Like, how big do you think you guys can scale talent?
Yeah, so I think we like to say the sky is the limit here, because the reality is the TAM in the job board industry is 25 billion, and that's what we identified. And in the recruitment industry in general, it's $500 billion. And so right now, we're not saying we're going after this TAM, but right now we definitely have an opportunity in the future to actually enter it, and have a significant say of where the industry is going. And so right now, what we want to concentrate on is become, like Pepsi's to Coke. We want to become the second largest job site on the planet in the next few years. And once we reach that, or in parallel to that, we will be able to as well get into this more recruitment time in a more digital manner than it is done today.
Yeah. Is anything surprising in terms of like how, I'm not sure if we could talk about like revenue or growth numbers, but at what point did you realize like, hey, this is going to be much bigger than maybe we originally anticipated, like 10 years ago? It's like, at what point did that you realize like, holy crap, we have like, we're sitting on a huge business, right? So the opportunity dictates we need to go out, raise money, think bigger. So curious about, that mindset, if it was like a moment in time or just a gradual process.
I think it was definitely a gradual process. So the story is with three guys, and we absolutely know nothing about the industry. And that played an advantage. And we were actually in Montreal, where, you are in the best time zone in the world, which is the Eastern time zone, where most businesses are, or close to Pacific time as well. And so we were able to see the best players, because innovation in our industry comes from the US mainly. So compete with the best, look at the best, but compete at first, in our own little, asterisk town, like where we are pretty much alone there. We started our site in French only in Quebec, with the idea of becoming global from day one. And so what happened first is that we learned how to index. Ben learned how to index content. Not only that, but scale content. So it's one thing to index Desjardins, RBC, Sun Life, like all those like Quebec and Canadian companies. But it's another to scale around the world and really index and scale and in 79 countries, 22 languages. So that's the first thing we learned. And so we learn how to generate traffic. And so through the different SEO, SEM, different activities there, learn how to re-engage with our users with like email alerts. Today we send close to a bit more than 1 billion email alerts per month, which is huge, right? And so though this is ever evolving, right? How to generate traffic, how to re-engage with the users, the app, and all those things. And then we learn how to monetize. And so the first moment we realized this could be big is when we learn how to monetize. Because at first I was the original sales guy. I was trying different business models. I was looking at all around, and then I realized, okay, pay-per-click advertising is the way to go. For a lot of reasons, it made a lot of sense, and we were able to scale. And we were pretty much at that point, we were selling a bit like extremely easily, and our clients were extremely happy to see the results. And so that's the first moment that we realized, okay, we are onto something. It's not like, we went from selling 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 a month to like 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. So it started growing like crazy for a few years. Then we didn't want to get into the US at first. For the first few years, we didn't want to go into the US because, the cost of a mistake, like when you of a mistake in Canada could be $1,000. That same mistake is $10,000 in the US. And so we didn't have the resources and the means to do it because we were always a profitable company. So we couldn't go and try things that easily. We had to try on a small scale. And at some point we realized and we learned actually how to generate traffic and monetize in the US. Once this happened, so basically we were spending a lot of time there speaking to competition, going to events for my industry. Once we got it, we pretty much exploded. We went from 1 year, we went from $7 to $27 million of revenues from one year to the other. Why? Because we understood how to work in the US, and the US is the biggest market in the world, obviously. So that was the big moment for us. When we realized that, hey, we were onto something, and then we could basically scale, in the rest of the world.
Yeah, it's figuring out the formula. And I think so many of those insights you're pointing out, Luca, like in terms of like, the quintessential startup story, right? So having like a beginner's mindset in terms of like, hey, we're outside of the industry, so we're looking at things from a fresh perspective. Your idea of going global day one, and this notion also of pivoting, right? Like trying many things and then adjusting. Do you think about, as you guys now, like, you're not longer going to be in the trenches as much anymore, and you're scaling the company, hiring like hundreds of employees, do you think about how you'll keep and maintain that startup culture? Is this something that you worry about, or is it baked into the company's DNA? So maybe an esoteric question, but curious to hear you if it's something that you ponder about.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is the kind of questions like we always like ask ourselves. And we've always been of this mentality. While people think about strategy, you already failed 3 times, and that's what made us learn so much. Is that when we first started, I think I changed the business model every single month. I had no patience, and so I had to iterate. And I knew that if my clients were not happy, it just didn't make sense. So I was changing until we find something that works. So we're pivoting. And so for us, there are some areas right now that we need to getting into, and that we're not selling as much right now, and that we want to grow, right? And so what space, for example, is the SMB space, right? Well, historically, we've been selling mostly to enterprise, and now we're growing into enterprise sales. But the reality is we still have that mentality. It's difficult, right? Because as you grow, you add more people. And when you change models a lot, or you tweak or you pivot, you create frustrations in the team because, hey, I've been working on this for so long and you asked me to change. But and our role here is like to make them understand also is that this is this is our DNA. We're entrepreneurs. And so this is how it's gonna keep on working. This is how we made it work. Is we're gonna keep on changing and pivot until it works, because we have no other choice. And that's how we like to do it. And so we're a bit like bulldozers on that aspect, that front, like we've been told like you're never gonna make it, like this is too hard. And so we're like, watch us, like we head down, we pedal on our bike until we smash the wall, and that's what we want to keep on doing. And you're right, it's not easy as you grow, because the teams expect a bit more of a maybe a bit more stability in the way you grow, right? But I think that entrepreneurship mindset where you build to break is the right mindset, even as you grow.
Yeah, having a chip on your shoulder can be a good thing too sometimes, right? So it's like, yeah, like watch us go, basically. Um, yeah, it's a fascinating story, Luca. Maybe talk. I'd like to hear you a little bit. Like, obviously, like we're hopefully coming out of this pandemic, even though people are talking about a sixth wave, was kind of like kind of stressing. But everyone's talking about talent, right? Pun intended. It's like the boardroom conversation that comes up the most, at least in from what I'm close to. And then the term "Great Resignation" obviously is being coined. Right, people like are thinking about their careers. How do you see your company benefiting from this trend? Right, where it's like the workforce has become much more mobile, much more dynamic. So curious to hear you a little bit.
Yeah. So usually we work very well with different cycles of the economy. So right now we are in a candidate cycle, right? So like candidates have the choice. They're resigning, but in general, they get headhunted. They don't need to look for a job for that much, right? So what happens right now is that the employers are desperately looking for people, right? And it's a different economy in North America than it is in Europe. I think in Europe it's still a bit easier to find talent than it is in North America, but in North America right now it's hard. And so what happens is that our clients obviously have high needs. They need to hire. They're ready to have higher cost per clicks, to appear on top of the job search results on our platform. And so this definitely helps us to get more traction. On the other hand, candidates are maybe looking for jobs a bit less, as opposed to when you have a lot of unemployment, a lot of people are looking for jobs, but the CPCs on the other hand would be lower. So at the end of the day, things even out, So right now we have a bit less candidates on our traffic on our platform than in a high unemployment economy, but the cost per clicks for my employees is extremely high because they're looking for jobs, to people, sorry, to hire.
Yeah, do you? It's funny you mentioned, yeah, totally like a candidates market, right? In terms of, and how do you work? Maybe diving into the enterprise space, right? Because it's like the obviously they're looking for support. So curious as to how enterprises are looking to partner with you guys to take advantage of this trend.
Yeah. So the way this works is that they need traffic, right? So they need candidate traffic, quality traffic on their ATS, and a constant flow of application that come through the site, so that their recruiters can have candidates to talk to and to hire on a general basis. So what we did basically is that we have people working, enterprise salespeople working pretty much in a very distributed way all around the world. So in every single major city around the world, we usually have enterprise people there that talk to enterprise companies that have needs, and then we make sure through our customer service and customer success teams that we yield the results that those companies need. Sometimes enterprise need a lot of candidates on their site. Sometimes they just need a few, and they just want to hire the right person. It's different when you hire for like large retailers that need a lot of warehouse workers, or when you hire for, an IT consulting company that needs like one project manager. So the needs are completely different. And so we make sure that we cater to all those needs depending on the needs. And usually we have those, CS or customer success people that help us do that.
Yeah, and I imagine on the SMB side, that's going to be more like a self-serve platform. People log in, building tools and applications for them. You mentioned the difficulty
Yes.
of breaking into the SMB space. So curious to hear about your success or failures a little bit on that front so far.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we built over the past few years, like we tried in the past few years, now we finally got it right. We got the product right. We know how we bring results, right? And this has been historically the issues, because the way we've been built is we were kind of built kind of like, we didn't even try, we didn't intend to, but like the way an aggregator worked well was to provide a lot of bulk traffic, right? And so we were extremely good at bringing results, the same amount of results every single day for a company that has like 1,000 jobs on their career site. And that's how they want to work, right? They want to have the same steady flow of candidates coming in every single day. When you work with SMBs, it's a different mindset, right? Imagine you're in Chicago, you own a deep dish pizzeria, and you want to hire a cook. Well, more than likely, you want that cook to start now, right? And so you want to post a job because you don't have a career site, so you need to post a job, and you want to post the job on a platform that you know. right? Because it's very branded, and so you need a branding here as a job site, to attract this kind of SMBs, right? And so uh, over the last few years, what we managed to learn is that when you have the combination of product and being able to bring a great product and being able to bring leads, and therefore you have brand and you have marketing on your platform because companies come and post on your site. If you have the combination of the two, you will be able to grow on the SMBs. But over the last few years, what's been really difficult was for us to provide results, to change everything. Now we provide results, and therefore next for us is really to get into this brand, and to and marketing as well, in order for us to get way more companies posting on our platform because they know about us. And this was part of the rebrand as well. As you know, we were called Nouveau. It was difficult to pronounce. And so that's why we wanted to be called something that resonated to people in our industry. And Talentcom made a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah, building a world class brand, right? So it's like it's really fascinating to see how your business models evolved over the years. I know we spoke a little bit about your culture, right? Building internally, and maybe to go back to it, I'd be curious to hear about. I visited your beautiful offices, and it seems like you guys are very intentional about culture.
Yeah.
Despite obviously the past little while of remote or hybrid. So curious to hear you about how you think about culture moving forward. How do you maintain that startup vibe despite growing and being yourself an
Yeah.
enterprise company? So yeah, I'd love to hear you on that, Lucas.
Yeah, this is a never evolving question, right? Because the reality is that it's not the same thing when you're 5, 10, now 400. We intend to hire like thousands of people in the next few years, and so we are experiencing every single challenge, that a growing company is is supposed to be experiencing. And so now, when we look at culture, obviously, as founders, we were always extremely close to our people. We make a point, to know every single, name of every person that is here, and be close to them. But the reality is that, ask the right questions. But as success comes in, as a growing company, what we realize is that, hey, sometimes it's not that easy to be, as close as you would want with people, because a natural barrier comes into place. And this is when we realize that, hey, maybe we underinvested in people or in HR, um, and so this is the kind of thing that is what we experience right now, is that we feel like, okay, we were HR, we felt like we were great with people, but as we grow, we feel that we let some people down, right? Because we cannot do everything we wanted to do as when we were, smaller. And so now for us is like, okay, so how do we make sure that we recreate, culture, the same culture that we would want pretty much all around the company. And so the culture that we have today is very different. We're a very distributed team. So we have teams pretty much all around the world, and we want cultures to be, localized. I think that every single country is different, every single region is different, and we need to be respectful of that, right? So for us, when we think at culture, we look at, if you look at federalism, well, this is provincial. We want to make sure that every single, office, as it say on culture, you have very strong cultural pillars and people that make culture, right? It's not just the founders. Yes, we are there from day one, but you quickly start hiring people that become cultural pillars in the company, and they're part of setting this culture. And so for us right now is to we're gonna obviously have to hire a lot of people, and this is obviously gonna have consequences into how culture grows. But what we're trying to do right now is to also, you know, um, talk to our leaders that have been here for a long time, that expect a lot from the founders and from HR's culture, and make them understand that they are the culture. It's not only us, right? It's they are the culture, and need to take this culture to that next level and be the proponent of that, of what we want to become. Not only that, but obviously, as I said, a lot of more HR, be closer to our people, and I think we'll end up in the right spot. But right now, recruitment for us is extremely important, and I'm still recruiting quite a lot. And actually, this is the activity that I'm doing the most to make sure that we hire the right people.
Yeah, I can imagine, right? I can imagine with the kind of growth numbers that you guys are having. Maybe one or two final more questions, because I'm like, it's atypical to see three co-CEOs, obviously three co-founders, but it's also from my perspective, it's become a core strength of talent and what you guys have. So curious to hear you of how you've made it work, and not just work but flourish in terms of your relationship with Ben and Max.
Yeah. So, well, that's the kind of question we always had, right? And so, I think at first people were like, I was laughing a bit, like, oh, three co-CEOs. But over the years, I think we managed to prove that, hey, we managed to grow. Like, okay, there is something there. These guys have built, like, now last year we built a hundred million US in terms of revenues, and they're three co-CEOs. That means that it grows. So why this happened? I think the first thing is that we have very clear functions, so we don't get into the other's territory. So this is extremely important here, is that we make sure that, okay, I trust you for this, you trust me for that. So trust is very important. We always talk about our problems, and so problems happen every day, every single day. And so we've been doing this for 11 years, and so every single day there's a new problem. So we need to keep your head cool, know that we all have the best intention for the company. And so we always find solutions. And in general, what happens is that, when we have, it's always two against one. Many times it's two against one. Sometimes it's 3-0, fine, but sometimes it's two against one. And we just go with the majority. Or sometimes it's one has a very strong opinion about something, the others do not. And so we go with that idea. So what we realize over time is, sometimes in terms of decision making, you lose in terms of speed, but you gain in terms of doing the right thing, because when you do something wrong, the other two will always be here to tell you, hey, this is wrong, man. We're going to change course. And so this is pretty much the model of Switzerland. The French like to say that the Swiss are very slow. And so I think this is part of the reason, because we like that, like we try to make the things right, but sometimes it can hinder speed. And again, I think this is not something that we open. Look, like, the reality is that we open. Like, we never said that we're always gonna be three co-CEOs. It's just that right now it worked. It worked. So once we start seeing that destroys value more than it creates value, we'll definitely change. But right now, listen, it's working.
Yeah, it's funny the way you depicted slow but mighty. It almost gives it conjures for me the image of like a snowball, right? It starts down like the top of the hill, very very small, but then over time it's almost like unstoppable, right? And it feels like that's kind of like the power that you guys have built. Lucas, I think I could probably pick your brain and learn from you for like hours, but obviously want to respect your time. I guess a final question: if people want to reach out, connect, learn more about the great work that you guys are doing at Talent, what's the best way?
Oh yeah, please reach out to on LinkedIn, Lucas Martinez. Always happy to answer any questions there. Traveling a lot, so if you happen to be in Montreal, Chicago, Barcelona, I was happy to Lausanne as well, Medellin. If I'd be happy to connect. And yeah, I think that would be it.
Lucas, thank you so much for your time. This is great.
Thank you very much, Nectar.